why they are so important, what we know about them, and how we are currently using them we've covered already. We even talked a little bit about space oceans. Yeah, it's awesome. Make sure you check out all of those episodes. But today, we're gonna get serious for a minute. Are the oceans screwed? I hope not. Ocean acidification is affecting us now, and it's affecting us because it's affecting marine life, and we are all connected. In the end of the Permian period, that was 250 million years ago, was something called the Great Dying. 90%, over 90% of all ocean life died, in part due to ocean acidification. By analyzing boron embedded in limestone from the Permian and Triassic periods, researchers found an abrupt shift in ocean pH levels. Now, pH is a measure of acid versus base, and life can only exist with a nice balance. Surface ocean pH levels dropped from 0.6 to 0.7 pH units in about 10,000 years during the Great Dying. Modern ocean pH levels have fallen by that same change, like that same delta, 0.1 pH units, since the Industrial Revolution started. That's only 200 years. That's 50 times faster than the 10,000 years measured by the boron concentrations from the Permian to the Triassic periods. pH is a logarithmic scale, so a tiny change like 0.1, while it doesn't seem like that much, that's humongous. That is a 30% increase in acidity. Ocean acidification is driven by excess carbon dioxide in the atmosphere because CO2 in the air dissolves into water. It's the reason that if you leave a glass of water out at night, the next day it tastes a little funny because it's got carbonic acid in it. CO2 from the air has dissolved into the water. According to geochemist and postdoctoral fellow at the University of Otago in New Zealand, his name is Matthew Clarkson, he said, "This was a pretty enormous change in acidity. I think it might be a massive warning in a worst-case scenario if we carry on with fossil fuels. The diversity after the Great Dying didn't recover for 5 million years. Needless to say, we won't be around for that long if we do kill off 90 to 95% of all ocean life." According to new research by the World Wildlife Fund, the other WWF, and the Zoological Society of London, the ZSL, overfishing and other threats have trimmed the amount of fish in the world's oceans to nearly half what was there in 1970. This is called industrial fishing. Essentially, we go out and catch as much fish as possible and bring it back in, as opposed to just catching what we need. Populations of some commercial fish stocks, including tuna, mackerel, and bonito, have fallen almost 75% since industrial fishing began. And according to the director of the WWF, the World Wildlife one, not the TV one, Marco Lambertini, there is a massive, massive decrease in species which are critical for both the ocean ecosystem and food security for billions of people. The ocean is resilient, but there is a limit. One solution that we talked a little bit about over on D News that I remember researching was to literally close the oceans, make it illegal to fish in the oceans for many years. I don't remember how many, but it was like more than a decade. The reason being, it would allow fish stocks to rebound. We're just pulling them out faster than they can breed and create more fish. 80% of the pollution of the marine environment comes from the land, and that is another problem that the fish have to face. Agricultural fertilizers and pesticides run, just like the rivers, off into the ocean. Evidence shows that the oceans have suffered at the hands of mankind for millennia. I mean, this isn't a new thing. It goes far back as Roman times, but now it's even worse than ever. Recent studies show that degradation, particularly of shoreline areas, has accelerated dramatically in the last 300 years. There's industrial discharge. There's runoff from farms and coastal cities. Fertilizer causes algae blooms that can be toxic and suck the oxygen out of the water. The industrial chemicals kill off massive amounts of life and can destroy phytoplankton, which produce oxygen for us and are things that, animals actually have to eat in the ocean. On top of that, we're dumping our trash into the ocean. There was a time when humans thought, the world is so big, we can just throw our trash here and no one will ever notice. But now solid waste like bags that never, ever breaks down, foam that never breaks down, and other items that are dumped into the oceans by land or on ships are frequently consumed by marine mammals and fish and birds. They mistake it for food, they eat it, and it does all sorts of terrible things. We haven't even mentioned in this entire series the Pacific Garbage Gyre, or the Pacific Trash Vortex. It's estimated to be the size of Texas, and although I know what you're picturing, and that is, like after a hurricane, floating, piles of trash all clumped together, that's not what it looks like. If you were standing in the middle of it, you wouldn't even see it unless you put a strainer into the water and pulled it out. You would see these tiny microscopic pieces of plastic and little teeny bits that you can see maybe, but they're kind of like they're so small that fish eat them. And then they eat them and eat them and eat them until their stomach is full of plastic and they can't eat the food they're supposed to eat. Because of all this and climate change, the oceans are being decimated. Our oceans are also getting hotter. Changing weather systems are going to affect humans directly, and maybe already have. According to NOAA, the 21st century will likely cause tropical cyclones globally to be more intense, on average, by 2 to 11%. That doesn't sound like much, but when it comes to a hurricane, you really don't want it to be 10% more powerful, right? Michael Mann, a climate researcher at Penn State University, told the Washington Post this week, as we recorded this, as ocean temperatures continue to warm as a result of human-caused climate change, we expect hurricanes to intensify, and we expect to cross new thresholds. Hurricane Patricia, which hit Mexico just recently, and her unprecedented 200-mile-per-hour sustained winds appears to be one of those now, unfortunately. That's crazy. Hurricane Patricia was the largest hurricane to ever make landfall, and when oceans heat up, even by a degree or two, it can cause major consequences for the life in the ocean and for the life on land, which maybe calls for a global warming series here on Test 2+. Why don't you tell us what you think about that? But the oceans are literally the biggest single thing on our planet. Aside from the planet itself, there's nothing else on Earth that takes up as much volume. The oceans are so important that without them, we literally could not live on the surface. Think of Mars. It used to have oceans. Now it doesn't. Would you want to live there? Probably not. Without them, we would never survive. They are an amazing resource, they're inspirational, and without them, how would we move stuff around the planet? We use them every single day, even if you live in the middle of a desert. The oceans are benefiting you, which is incredible. They're our greatest resource, and without them, what would we do? Why don't you talk a little bit about the oceans and how you feel about them down in the comments? And thanks for watching Test 2+. We'll see you next time with more science. You can come find me on Twitter. I'm @TraceDominguez. See you later.